Oh, well, hello there. My name is Entrana Bro, and I'm a vanilla chunk account that started on Entrana. This video will be a recap of Season 1 from the Entrana Bro chunk series. I would have included this in Episode 1 of Season 2, but it's too long, so I decided to just feature it as a second video. Episode 1 of Season 2 is scheduled to be available 1 hour from the time that this recap is posted. Check it out, and I hope that you like it. I'll be reviewing Season 1 from both the story-based perspective and also chunk progression. Alright, so let's go. The story. Entrana Bro's tale begins on the holy grounds of Entrana. Unaware of his family history, Entrana Bro was raised by Fred, the high priest of the Saradomin Church. Over time, Entrana Bro developed strength and independence, defeating a zombie in the nearby dungeon. This is recognized by Fred, who hopes to harness Entrana Bro's potential by tasking him to assist their Gothixian comrades with ridding a Zamorakian curse. He is successful, but on his way home is tricked by a highwayman and a witch to brew a deadly potion, serving as a life lesson to foster maturity, but also raising questions about his past. Before departing, the witch comments about his mother practicing the dark magical arts. When Entrana Bro starts to ask questions about his parents, Fred sends him to Lumbridge to learn more from Eric and Ernie, ultimately meeting and putting to rest the spirit of his father. His father reveals that he and Entrana Bro's mother had uncovered resources and applications for unlimited magic potential. Entranced by these newfound powers, it had become clear that his mother had nefarious intentions. When Entrana Bro's father recognized this, he put Entrana Bro in the care of the Saradomin Monastery. Then, he personally confronted her, but was defeated and decapitated. When describing all of this to Fred, it is evident that Fred had already known the details and divulges his hope that Entrana Bro will be the one to defeat his mother and save Gielinor from her wrath. In order to do so, he must master each chunk along the way, which includes his current ones. He thus begins slaying monsters in the Entrana dungeon and boneyard. He begins to strengthen friendships with locals like Frank, the beer-belly cave monk, and Francis, the monk farmer. Francis mentions that he is unable to grow hops because there is an evil infestation slowly plaguing the lands of Entrana. Entrana Bro correlates this with his own struggle, the greater demon not dropping a tuna. Conferring with Fritz, the avid Ranar smoker, he learns that the Draymond tree in the Entrana dungeon was planted by his mother, bestowing the Tunini curse on the island. While chopping it down, an evil tree spirit emerges, which Entrana Bro defeats, cleansing Entrana of the cursed infection. Completed with his initial chunk set, Entrana Bro heads on to the Asgardian mainland. There, he learns the location of Cedrador, the head wizard. Entrana Bro remembers being told by his father that Cedrador had been manipulated by his mother, so perhaps he might know where his mother is. Cedrador, then Aubrey, described Gielinor's situation to be more dire than expected, since his mother's powers and reach have grown exponentially. They are unsure of her current location, but recall historic plans to lock her in Humblethorn after she had invaded. Maintaining that lock was the responsibility of Drezel, on the border of Mistalin at the Saradomin Temple. Arriving at the temple, Entrana Bro discovers Zamorakian forces, whom cheer the name Hanera Torment, who have taken over. Hanera Torment is Entrana Bro's mother. Entrana Bro rescues Drezel, who then takes him to the Holy Barrier, which is still sealed, suggesting Hanera remains in Humblethorn. Drezel informs Entrana Bro that a hermit, Philemon Tarlock, would be able to pinpoint her exact location, but before dissolving the barrier and heading off, he requires a special sickle to defend himself. Drezel's brother happens to be Fred, who is the only known person capable of crafting such an item. Thus unveils the romantic relationship between Fred and Frank, which is soon to culminate in marriage. In exchange for Entrana Bro delivering a wedding ring, Fred pledges to craft him the sickle. After crafting a dragonstone ring, Fred supplies Entrana Bro with that sickle. Entrana Bro fights off Gas and finds Philemon Tarlock weakened and nonsensical. He is revived with magic mushrooms, which enables him to subsequently regain status as the nature spirit. In this form, the nature spirit can perform the Localis Coordinatum spell to locate Hanera Torment. While the nature spirit is aware of Hanera's power and crimes, he is unaware that she is also the mother of this Entrana Bro. If he had known, he would never have performed the spell to locate Hanera for him. Alas, her general location is determined to be in 4 and 3, the wilderness, though something perturbs the nature spirit spell, preventing greater detail. Season 1 ends with Entrana Bro attending Fred and Frank's wedding, bidding his farewell before venturing deeper into the wilderness. Now, let's look at Entrana Bro from the chunk account perspective. Entrana Bro had 3 starting chunks, 2 on the Entrana mainland and the Boneyard chunk, accessible via the magic door. Because of our superpowers granted by Jagex, we were able to bypass certain game mechanics, letting us climb back up the Entrana dungeon ladder and home teleport to Entrana from the wilderness. Anyways, we started on Entrana with no items. Our chunk tasks included 8 monster drop tables with best in slot items obtainable from the Greater Demon. We started off by killing chickens, then monks, eventually trialing zombies, but those really sucked. One of our best discoveries was finding a bowl on the 2nd floor of Fritz's house, which enabled us to make stews using his potatoes and chickens for meat. Thereafter, skeletons in the Boneyard became our preferred monster to train on, and it's also where we would later do our prayer training. After 98 hours and 62 random events, fishing was unlocked, making collecting food much quicker. The most challenging task was the Greater Demon. We thought we could gather enough runes to kill it with magic, which required first unlocking the magic skill by grinding chaos dwarves that had wandered into our chunk for their mind rune drop. This was discovered to be futile, and we opted to use melee against the Greater Demon. At first, Greater Demons were killed by flinching, but this was taking a while, so we decided to get 43 prayer to prayer flick. After 416 KC, going 9.75 times dry, we finally got the tuna drop, which was probably delayed due to the Tunini curse, but we completed the chunk. These 3 initial chunks took 5 days of in-game time. We next rolled the Port Sarum chunk, which had a small fishing, cooking, thieving, and magic grind, as well as 4 more drop tables. We already had the appropriate fishing level, we just needed the rod from Garen. We also had the cooking level, we just needed the supplies from Wyden's food shop. We thieved men until 20 thieving, and then stole a candle from the Entrana church. We had access to Betty, so we went back to Entrana to train 241 magic. This chunk probably took less than 12 hours. We then rolled the South Falador farm chunk, which was arguably even easier. There were 6 new monsters to kill. Usually the imps would be the most annoying of these, but I actually finished their entire drop table at 116 KC. We received balls of wool from imps, which were required for the chunk's crafting task of making a strip of cloth. And last, we decided to have a personal task of making fancy potatoes. Overall, this chunk would only take about another 12 hours. Last, we rolled the East Falador chunk, and this was a beast. It was also the most recent, so I won't go into excessive detail. I first trained to 40 thieving using the Entrana church candles. I had to do this in order to thieve from guards. For 92 mining, I first used low tier rocks in the Dwarven mine, then Motherlode mine to level 60, at which point I switched off between Motherlode mine and the triple iron rocks in the mining guild. If I was AFK, it was MLM. If I had time to focus, it was the iron. Of course, I ended up with a lot of ore regardless. Along the way, I earned many gem bags, which helped with the crafting grind, and related to my story component, I was able to craft some rings, but a lot of my crafting training came from glass blowing. Ultimately, I completed 58 crafting, which was a diet version relative to the level 83 needed for crafting amethyst bolt tips. My best method to train smithing was world hopping and fixing the struts in Motherlode mine. I had set my goal at level 70, which isn't that high, but if you've ever fixed struts for many hours at a time, you might understand why. And that's about it for chunk progression. Season 1 ended with us having 6 completed chunks, about to roll our 7th. Tune in for the first episode of Season 2, which is to be posted 1 hour after this video airs on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining, and I'll see you soon.